Egypt's president says the Sinai is safe and fully under control, but Mohamed Morsi may have a hard time persuading neighbouring Israel after a bloody attack on a border post left at least 15 Egyptian soldiers dead. CNN reporters on both sides of the border are covering this. Ian Lee is in Cairo, Diana Magnay in Jerusalem. Ian, let's start with you first of all. Tell us a little bit more about the attack, the motive behind the attack, and what is the situation in the Sinai? It's a very lawless place.
Well, that's exactly right, Michael. This is a very lawless place, and since Egypt's revolution, there has really been a security vacuum in Sinai. What we're hearing is that 35 militants attacked an army outpost, killing 16 people and injuring 7, and this comes from the military. And this is really an unprecedented attack. We've never seen militant groups actually attack the army before. In the past, they have attacked the police. So this is an escalation of attacks in Sinai. And what President Mohamed Morsi said earlier, that Sinai is secure and that it's under complete control, well, that'll be a very difficult thing to do. And if he has already done it, that's a very quick move, because Sinai has been unstable since the revolution. You have militants with heavy artillery, or heavy weaponry there, and so to secure it this quickly would really be quite a feat, Michael.
And what from your side of the border is the perceived motive, and where did these guys come from?
So what the army is saying is that these militants came from Gaza and that they attacked the soldiers. A lot of very conservative Islamic groups that have had a past of jihad activities, have condemned these attacks. The motives behind it and who is behind it isn't quite clear yet, but this is definitely an unprecedented attack against Egypt's military. And there has been a lot of strong condemnation from all across Egyptian society, and as well as Hamas has condemned these attacks. So while this attack is one of the largest we've seen, it does come with a lot of condemnation.
Indeed. Ian, thanks so much. Ian Lee there in Cairo. Diana Magnay is at CNN Jerusalem with the news from that side of the border. And, you know, as we were saying, Sinai lawlessness has long been of concern to Israel. What is the government saying there?
Absolutely, a huge concern to Israel. In fact, the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton spoke to CNN just a few weeks ago, saying that she'd had intense discussions with both Egyptian and Israeli officials about the security situation in Sinai. Michael, and her concerns that Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups were accumulating in the Sinai Peninsula because of the security vacuum that had really started from the fall of the Mubarak regime, and that situation was not under control, not under this new administration, not since Mubarak's regime had fallen. And this is, of course, a huge concern for Israel. They said that they did have some intelligence that a possible attack was being planned. Big question marks, of course, about who these attackers are and whether they do have links with groups from Gaza. But as the Defense Minister Ehud Barak said, he hopes that this is a wake-up call for Egyptian officials who Israel believes are not taking the security situation in Sinai seriously enough. Let's just take a listen.
In my opinion, the risk of a heavier attack was prevented, and this is also a very important and successful operation in the battle that occurred there along the entire border. And perhaps it was also a wake-up call to the Egyptians to take matters in hand on their side of the border in a firmer way.
The Israeli Defense Forces say they know that there are extremist groups operating in Sinai. Some of them do have links with terrorist cells operating in the Gaza Strip. Hamas, as we know, has condemned these attacks, last night's attacks, and they have, though, sealed all the tunnels which cross from Gaza into Egypt, and also the Rafah border crossing, which would have been the ways, had some of those 35 assailants come from Gaza, would have been the way that they might have exited Gaza. Gaza, Michael.
Yeah, and of course, Israel militarily involved in this latest incident by necessity. A very delicate sort of diplomatic dance going on between Israel and the new government in Egypt. Israel's never shied from going across the border if need be. Is that something that's being discussed there after this attack?
Well, of course, Israel has not shied from going across the border, and it did not do so in this case, just to be clear. It was only once those assailants, 5 of the gunmen, had crossed the Israeli border that Israel responded, shooting at them from the air, killing all 5 of the gunmen who had actually commandeered 2 vehicles and crossed across the border. Israel says that they had probably planned to kidnap either Israeli civilians or an Israeli soldier. But as you say, it is extremely difficult for Israeli intelligence to monitor operations that might be being planned on Egyptian sovereign soil. And that is why it wants Egypt to really step up to the mark and make sure that it has that security situation under control. Israel knows quite well what is going on in Gaza, but now, of course, the entire of the Sinai Peninsula, that is a significant security threat for Israel. It is another story altogether, Michael. Yeah,
indeed. An important situation developing there. Diana, as always, thanks. Diana Magnay there in Jerusalem. Ian Lee earlier in Cairo.